In yesterday's video, I showed you some unconventional yet creative ways to create textures for your 3D models. Today, I'm going to show you some ways that you can use those textures. So here we've got my character, which has a shirt and a pair of pants. And if we take a look at the meshes and open up the UV editor, we'll see that the shirt has in fact been UV unwrapped, as well as the pants. However, the figure has not. That's okay, because we are going to be working with the shirt today. So with the material for the shirt selected, I will go to the color channel, click on the checkerboard, and I will select File, because I will be applying an image. And now, if I click on the folder in the attribute editor, I will select the futon texture, a texture I created simply by photographing the fabric on my futon, which I think makes an incredibly stylish shirt, don't you think? Or perhaps I'll select one of my other materials. The carpet in my living room makes a very stylish sweater. And of course, if I open up the UV editor, I can tweak the UVs to make the texture lay on the model even better. Now let's try one of the textures that I created using paper and markers. If you want to see how I made this texture, check out yesterday's video where I go through the process of making a seamless tileable texture on paper. Remember that if you want to see your shader network, simply select the material and click on the double arrow button that says Input and Output Connections. And to the far left of my shader network here, you will see the Place 2D Texture node. And if I select it, what I can do is I can change the number of times my texture repeats or tiles. If I want my texture to tile, I simply change the numbers under Repeat UV. If I change the values to 2 and 2, the texture will repeat 2 times on the U-axis and 2 times on the V-axis. But of course, I can make my texture tile far more than that. I can change the orientation of my texture by either rotating the UVs or rotating the frame. So currently I have an image applied to the color channel of my material, which I can see in both the attribute editor. I can see that an image has been applied, or a file has been applied, I can also see it in my hypershade. If I click on the node representing the file, I can click on the folder once again and select a different image. I'll try one of the maze textures I created. Again, this is a tileable texture, and if you're interested in knowing how I made this texture, watch yesterday's video. I actually made a number of these textures because it was so much fun. As I'm sure you can tell, my true calling was probably to be a fashion designer. Another technique I used for creating textures was done by using paper and scissors. I cut out some paper snowflakes. And in this video I'm going to be showing you some very interesting things that we can do with this. Here are some of these snowflakes that I created. I simply cut them out of paper and then photographed them using the camera on my phone. And I will select this one. Without the texture tiling, it actually creates an interesting design. But let's see what happens when we make this texture tile. Once again, I will select the material and I will go to the Materials Place 2D Texture node. And changing the repeat UVs, we'll see what it looks like as a tileable texture. And I'll quickly check out some of the other snowflakes that I created. Now, because these textures have very little color information, they're primarily black and white, it seems like we can't do a whole lot with them. These snowflakes, while interesting, might seem a bit limiting because they're simply black and white. They don't have much color information. But in fact, there's a lot that we can do with it. Here I've created a new Lambert. And I'm going to go to the color channel, click on the checkerboard, and I'm going to apply a texture, but it's not going to be a regular image, it's going to be a layered texture, which you can find under Other Textures, Layered Texture. By clicking on the green color swatch in my layered texture, I can change the color of my material. And by clicking next to the color swatch, I can create another layer. Notice that each of my layers have a color channel and an alpha channel. If I select the yellow color swatch and then go to its alpha channel, I can apply one of my snowflakes to that channel. Notice that my snowflake texture is now being used as a mask. It is letting the green color of the layer underneath, it's allowing it to come through. And if I select its Place 2D Texture node, I can set its repeat UV values so that I get a tiling texture. Notice that I can still change the colors of my two layers. And in addition, I can add a third layer and give it a different color. I'll make this one red, go back to my second layer, and add an alpha channel onto it. For its alpha channel, I'll select another one of my snowflakes. I'm not yet seeing my third layer. So what I need to do is go to my layered texture, select the middle layer, and set its alpha blend mode to over. And now I can see 3 layers laid on top of one another. And once again, I can change its UV tiling. And I can start to build up very elaborate geometric designs. And of course I can go and adjust its color channel. Each of the different layers has a different Place 2D texture node. And I can adjust them independently of one another, either by making them tile more or less, or by rotating. And this is how I can create all sorts of interesting combinations. Another way to get variation from your layered textures is through the blend mode. This is very similar to blend modes in programs like Photoshop. Adjusting the blend mode changes the way that the top layer interacts with the layer underneath it. Take note of all the variety I'm getting simply by changing the blend mode. And I think I like this one. When working with layered textures, don't forget that you can also combine them with your 2D and 3D procedural textures. I'm going to get rid of one of my layers, and then selecting my top layer, I will break the alpha channel, so I'll no longer be using the snowflake. And I'm going to choose a 2D procedural shader for it, the checkerboard. Which of course I can adjust. And so far I haven't applied an image texture to my color channel in my layered textures. So I'll try to do that now. I will apply one of the textures that I created by taking pictures with my phone. The texture I'm going to pick is one I took of a small throw rug I have in my house. And another texture I created was simply made by photographing a kitchen rag. And as in the previous examples, I can select their Place 2D texture nodes to adjust their UV tiling. And of course I can take my 2D procedural checkerboard texture and make it tile more. And by making my checkerboard tile in only one axis, I can create stripes, either horizontal stripes or vertical stripes. If I want to make the stripes wider, I simply need to make them tile less. So there you have it. Yesterday I showed you some simple but fun ways for creating textures. And today I showed you some ways that you can use those textures and how you can combine them to create endless variety and combinations. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.